Hello everyone. In this lecture we will learn how to measure execution time of small code. When you solve a problem, there can be multiple solutions for one problem. Now the real challenge is to choose the best optimal solution. Python provides a way to measure the execution time for the code. This will work when you have a small code. So let's see one example. I'll import from TimeIt. Let's import TimeIt. So inside this module we have another module. Here we can use some functions. TimeIt. Now see the parameters here. The first one is statement. Then we have a setup and you can see the timer, number and globals. So here we can pass the code or a function which we want to execute the time, and here we can pass the number of times it will execute. By default it will execute the code 1,000,000 times. So let's test it. I'll create two functions. So let me test. Two loops are there, while and for. So I'll write a small logic where I'll add all the numbers from 1 to 100, and let's see which loop is best for this kind of scenario. So while test, I'll create a variable. I starts from 0 and while I is less than 100. I'll create one more variable here, sum equals to 0, and I'll add the I value in sum. Now same thing I'll do. Okay, I have to increment the value of I equals to I plus 1. So here I'm adding the number from 0 to 100. Now let's do the same thing with the for loop. For here we don't need I value. So for I in, we can use here a range function. And I'll remove this part. So both the code is doing the same thing. It's adding from 0 to 100. This also 0 to 100, but here we are using for loop with the range function. Now which solution is optimal, which will take less time? Let's test it. So here I'll create a variable w and I'll call a function TimeIt. Now you can see here the first parameter is the code. Now I'll call while. By default it will run this function, it will call 1,000,000 times, remember. Now let's do the same thing for the for loop. TimeIt and for test, and before that I'll print. Now this will return the number of seconds, the execution time. Let's print. Alright, so call this function 1,000,000 times and see how much time it takes. But inside this code I'm executing the code and adding all the number between 1 to 100. Same thing I'm doing here. Let's see. I'll run this, and you can see here it's taking so much time because it's a 1,000,000 time this code will be executed, and inside that also this loop is 100 times. So while loop is taking 26 seconds and for loop is only 12. I'll reduce this 10 time only. So let me run this again. You can see 3 seconds and 2 seconds. So the obvious solution is here while, for. This will take less time. Now one more thing here we can do, we can pass the number of times. By default it is 1 million, so I'll go for only 1000 times. So here let me pass another parameter here. How many times I want to execute? 1000 times. Let's test it and see. So this time I'll just change it 1000. Okay, I want to add all the numbers between 1 to 1000, and that code will execute 1000 times. And again you can see the difference here. So while this solution is taking almost double time. So the point is here, this time it function is very useful to measure the execution time for the small code. Whenever you have doubt like which code will is optimized, it will take less time, you can use time it function, pass this function, and how many times you want to execute. Usually the difference is negligible here if I have to just run it one time, because I'm calling it 1000 times, then you can see the difference.